The Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner. Chapter 11. The Doctor Takes a Hand. The days went by happily for the Boxcar Children. They found more treasures in the dump, and Henry worked every day for Dr. Moore. One noon, Henry came home with some new stockings for Benny. Benny was very happy about them and made everyone admire them. And when Jessie looked at the new stockings, she had a happy thought. She carefully washed Benny's old stockings and hung them up to dry. And that afternoon, she and Violet sat down with a work bag between them to make a bear for Benny. "You must make a tail, too, Jessie," begged Benny, watching her put on the arms and legs and heads. "Bears don't have tails," said Jessie. "Your old bear didn't have a tail." "But this bear must have a tail," replied Benny, knowing that Jessie would put on two tails if he asked her to. "Well, what kind of tail?" asked Jessie at last. "Long and thin," said Benny happily, "so I can pull it." "Benny!" cried Jessie, laughing. But she made the tail long and thin, just as Benny had ordered. "What's his name, Jessie?" asked Benny, when at last the bear was handed over to him. "Well, I haven't thought about a name," replied Jessie. "Why don't you just think up a nice name for him?" "Well, you made him out of my old stockings, so let's name him Stockings." "All right, Stockings it is," agreed Jessie, trying not to laugh. And from that day on, the bear's name was Stockings as long as he lived, and he lived to be a very old bear indeed. One afternoon, Jessie saw how long Benny's hair was getting, and she cut it with Violet's scissors. Benny stood quietly while she did it. But while his sisters were getting suppers, he said to himself, "Jessie cut my hair. I'll get Violet's scissors and cut Watch's hair. He will look better." He found Violet's scissors and made Watch lie down on his side, and then he began to cut the hair off. Benny said, "Good dog, Watch. You are Jessie's dog, so I will cut a J in your hair. Hold still now." Watch laid still, and Benny began to cut a J. It was not a very good J, but it looked a little like one. Soon Benny had cut off all the hair on one side with a J in the middle, and he stood admiring his work, and just then Jessie came to see what he was doing. "Oh, Benny, what are you doing?" And then she began to laugh. "Oh, Violet, come and see. Watch looks so funny." Jessie laughed and laughed until she almost cried, and Violet laughed until she did cry. And then she could not stop crying. She cried, and at last Jessie made up her mind that Violet was really sick. "Oh, you must go to bed, Violet." She helped her carefully into the boxcar and put pine needles all around her and under her. And then she wet a handkerchief in the cold water of the brook and laid it on her little sister's hot head. "Oh, I wish Henry would come home. What shall we do?" When Henry came home at last, he looked at Violet and said that maybe she had a cold. "Maybe she sat too long by the brook," he said. "Well, if Violet is very sick, she ought to go to the hospital," said Jessie. "Yes, I know that, and we don't want her to go to the hospital if we can help it. We should have to tell her name then." "Yes," said Jessie, "and then Grandfather could find us." The two older children sat up with Violet, and they put cold water on her head, but after dark, Violet shook all over, and Jessie was frightened. She covered Violet all over with pine needles, but still she shook. They could not get her warm. "I'm going to get Dr. Moore," said Henry. "I'm afraid Violet's very sick." And then Henry started to run. He ran even faster than he had run in the race. Down the hill into the town he ran until he came to Dr. Moore's house. "Please come," he cried. "Violet is very sick." The doctor said, "Come and get into my car." He didn't ask Henry which way to go, but the car went up the right road. When they came to the woods, he said to Henry, "You stay here in the car." He ran alone up the hill to the boxcar. It seemed like magic that he knew where to go. When Dr. Moore came back, he was carrying Violet in his arms. Jessie and Benny and Watch came too, and they all got in the car. "Are you going to take her to the hospital?" asked Henry. "No," said Dr. Moore. "I'm taking her to my house." When they stopped at last, Dr. Moore carried Violet into the house and said to his mother, "Violet's very sick. We must put her to bed." Mrs. Moore hurried around, opening beds and bringing pillows, and Mary came from the kitchen with a hot water bottle. After a while, Violet began to get warm. And then Mrs. Moore came to get the other children. "You must stay here all night," she said. She gave Henry and Benny a big bed, and Jessie slept in a little one. Violet was so sick the doctor did not go to bed all night. He would not leave her. He sat by her side until 10 o'clock in the morning. Before 10 o'clock, a man came to see the doctor. Mary told him he could wait, so he sat down in the living room, and soon Benny came in. "Where's the doctor?" asked the man crossly. "He's up in Violet's room," answered Benny. "This means $5,000 to him if he will come down," said the man. "Oh, he can't come down now," said Benny. "What do you mean, boy? What's he doing?" "He's taking care of my sick sister Violet. She's very sick." "And you mean he wouldn't leave her even if I gave him $5,000? "Yes, that's what I mean." Then the man said, "You see, I've lost a little boy, and I think the doctor knows where he is. My little boy is just about as old as you are." "Well, if you don't find him, maybe you can have me," remarked Benny. "I like you." "You do? Come on up here and get in my lap." Benny climbed into the man's lap. "Have you got a dog?" he asked. "No," said the man. "He's dead now, but you can see him in my watch. Here he is." Benny looked at the dog. "He looks like a very good dog. I have a dog too. His name is Watch." Just then Watch came in with Dr. Moore. "Oh, good morning," said Dr. Moore. "Benny, you can go and play with Watch." Benny ran out, and the man said, "Dr. Moore, where are my grandchildren?" "That little boy was one of them," said Dr. Moore quietly. "That beautiful boy?" said the man. "Yes, they are all good children, but they are afraid of you. They are afraid you will find them." "Well, how do you know that?" "They've changed their name," said the doctor. He looked at the man in a queer way. "The big boy changed his name on field day. You saw him then." "I saw him? What did he change his name to?" "Henry James." "The running boy, the boy who won the free-for-all. I don't like that boy. So I am his grandfather?" Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And remember, the Principal Grandma says, you'll never know what comes next until you turn the page.